I want to say peace out to the Hip Hop Archive. This is Rennie Harris. What's up?
What's the significance of hip hop in the universities? Or non, I mean, we can critique it.
Yeah, no, this is a big question. You know what I mean? Because it's one of those things where you have students who have no clue.
Right. And
who are not involved in it, so it's harder, especially for me.
And nowadays,
not as a full-on, like, for real academic, but you know what I mean?
My students would give you way more respect than they give me.
Well, you know what I mean?
For the record.
Well, I'm saying in regards to finding the actual words to put together to explain to them properly, to have the information, but also to feel something visceral about it.
Right.
You know, because when you come from it, sometimes it's kind of like you want people to be as passionate about it as you are, or even if you're not from it, but if you're passionate, so and then sometimes your words just start to float.
Right.
And so I see that a lot when I'm teaching. So I'm like, but so I use different methods. Sometimes I perform for my class.
That's so tight.
You know what I mean? Or I bring in other performers and have them perform or lecture or talk, that kind of thing, so that they get it different ways versus me just kind of because I can give them dates and all kinds of stuff, but
well, that's why I think that you like having artist professionals like yourself in the classroom is more important. Students will actually get more from it than they would. Not to say then, but then, or it's at least good to partner or whatever, because the way I'm putting my words together is boring to them, right? Or they'll be like, she's killing something that I thought I loved with all these like terms that I gotta look up in the dictionary. We're into dance and hip hop.
Well, I think it's actually probably, as far as I'm concerned, the most important of all of it, because just as a dancer alone, you're a physical historian. You retain the information from the past, the present, and the future. And so by the way a person moves, you can understand what was going on politically, socially, and economically through a person's movement, even in their posture. So if you look at the way people walked in the 1800s versus the way people walk down the street today, it's two different, modes of how you hold your body and why. And most of that's defined by what was going on politically or socially, economically, and what have you. So I think it's the most important of all of it. And in regards to hip hop, it confirms one's individuality because the action is more important than the word for me. The word it can dissipate at any point in time. Action never really dissipates. It happens, and it makes its mark all the time.
As one who teaches courses on hip hop, culture, dance, arts, aesthetic at universities, what is your feeling about having hip hop on university campuses?
Well, my first feeling was that we, as participants, as pioneers, as creators, needed to be a part of this learning, this institution of higher learning, be a part of teaching what it is that we do, or what it is that everyone is a part of at this point. And the reason being because one of the biggest fears for me, which may be inevitable on some level, is that what happened to rock and roll is going to happen to hip hop, and what happened to jazz is going to happen to hip hop, and not just talking about the aesthetic, the culture itself as well, but just like from a dance perspective, in regards to jazz, you have Gus, Fosse, and Luigi, who they believe is the fathers of jazz, when jazz was way before these cats took it and did their own thing. Of course, they deserve their respect for what they've done with it, but clearly there's a whole other history of jazz dance prior to these guys coming in. So if it's going to change, then I look at it, we need to be a part of that change. We need to be a part of orchestrating how it's being done and how it's information that's being put out. And just to remind people about the truth, you know, because if you never do go back and do the history of rock and roll, the history of jazz, you won't know that it was a black music form
Right.
at all,
Right.
you know. And you go back and it was J. Edgar Hoover wrote a whole thing, the FBI memo. He says, we have to do something about this black music, rock and roll, that's influencing the white American youth. You know, it's in paper in black and white, so as a confirmation that rock and roll was a black form. So that's a paraphrase, but not quite a quote. But yeah, so that's why I think it's important we belong in institutions, and now is the time to do it because we're in a major transition. You know.
And one more question. So you've done a lot of work in communities, in neighborhoods, what we might say in the streets, working with young people, engaging communities. That's something that's hip hop, right? And so how can we bring, or do you have any ideas about how people bring that to university campuses, or how do we link the two, universities and communities? Through
Well,
hip-hop?
I think the university, I think the link is already there. The idea of, you know, lobbying and all these different factions on the universities fighting for this and fighting for that, that's what hip-hop's about, individual voice and choice. And I want to wear this today versus I have to wear a Gap, or I have to wear other name brand, or I just want to make my own clothes, my own line, you know. So I think the link is there. I think what's important is to, again, for people just to be aware of is how, I don't know how to say, like how the thinking of humans, so to speak, the structure by which how we think regarding, you know, all of a sudden things become separated, and then people forget the beginning of it. So for Gap to become Gap, there had to be someone sitting in somebody's house somewhere thinking, I'm going to come up with this store, and it's going to call the Gap, and I'm going to make this line. And so it had to start from somewhere, the community. And so the idea of this, you know, community being the nucleus, or the catalyst for this movement. You know, we have to remember that the community is always engaged, and the community is always forever working so that these other people come with these ideas and take it to these other places. But there's always a connection. If we can remember that there is a connection, there always is a connection, then, you know, we can really begin to accent on them, begin to pull these things out and showcase when we, you know, have these relationships the way they should. But most people separate it. All of a sudden, once it goes to this great idea, it becomes high art or high this or whatever, versus, well, it's just a great idea that someone took and became popular. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's like a hierarchy. Yeah, you know what I mean? So if there wasn't these people who just said, forget the society, I'm going to do my thing, we wouldn't have a lot of the stuff that we have. So I think we just have to remember that we all start at home first. And if we can keep those linkages, meaning we need to go back home to visit our parents,
Ooh.
you know what I mean, our family, and we can do that, then we can go back and go abroad and do all that, the stuff that, you know, but the family always stays home, the community is always there. You know, remember that, and I think that's how we make the link.
Teach. Where can we find you on the web to find out, like, when you're rolling through our hood, so we can come see you? Or what's the best website?
RHP, okay, let me, RHPM, that stands for Rennie Harris Pure Movement, RHPM at, RHPM.org, sorry. So RHPM.org, you hit that website, and we'll be right there. Get on our mailing list, get all the information, where we are, what we're doing, that kind of thing.
Check us out on our hood. Thank you so much.
No, thanks for having me.
Hiphop Archive.